Hi everyone, today we are talking about what you need to be gathering now as you're spending the PPP money so that you can get it forgiven in the future. All right, so let's get started. We're gonna dive right in. Just to give you a little bit of background, I'm a CPA and I came from an audit background. So I actually went into companies and inspected documents to audit the financial statements. So this information is coming to you from what I would use and what auditors typically use as proof and evidence of expenses. And so that I think that this will be helpful for you so that you can think about what the bank might want to look at and what the SBA might care about when it comes to proving that you've had these expenses for the PPP loan in order to get them forgiven. So if this is the first video you've seen of me, I want you to stop you right here and go back and look at some of the other videos that we've done specifically around the PPP program, because if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say PPP, then you need to go back and educate, and then and then we'll go. But really, if you don't have a PPP loan by now, then maybe you don't need to watch this video at all. So I'm going to dive in and say, so the kind of overarching thing that we need to think about when it comes to documentation is that the bank is going to want to get real evidence that you've actually spent the money and that the money was spent on the correct thing. So just as a brief reminder, payroll costs, utilities, mortgage interest and other debt interest obligations, and then rent. So rent, utilities, mortgage interest, other interest, and payroll costs, okay? So all of those things, you're gonna need to provide some sort of documentation to say, yes, bank, I actually did spend this money. You can't just send over your bank statements and think that that's gonna be fine. So please be aware that just sending bank statements may not be enough. Even if you put all the money in a separate account and you run everything through there, it still might not be enough. And I'm going to tell you some things that you need to pull together to actually be able to support that information. So from an underlying perspective, what we want to see is we want to see that you owe the money for every single cost that you have, that you actually owe the money, that you have paid the money, and that the money came out of the business. Because you could pay it with a paycheck or with a check. You could say, oh, look at my check stub, I actually paid it. But if it actually never went out of the bank account, then you didn't actually pay it. You know what I mean? So we need to kind of track this payment all the way through. But what the government wants to see in order for the funds to be forgiven is they want to see that you had the obligation to pay and that you actually paid it within your 8-week timeline of your PPP loan. So that's the covered period that you'll see if you are reading the act at all. It's called the covered period. So when you're spending this money during the covered period, you need to have documentation to support it. The first thing I want you to do is think about, what piece of documentation do I need for every single cost that proves that I have an obligation to pay? For example, bills. You get bills from your utility company. That is an obligation to pay. They have provided a service, you have to pay them. So save your bills. And the thing with the utilities is they want to know that it's something that was in service as of February 15th, 2020. So I would go ahead and start saving all your bills. Go online and pull them off, or if you can find them paper copies, that's fine. Scan them in digitally just so you have a nice little digital copy. And then save February through June. I don't care if you have to give it to them or not. I just right now save February through June 2020. Have it in your pocket in case you need it, because if they say, well, is this a new utility? Did you just sign up for this service? Then you can say, no, look at my bill from February. Here you go. You can see it right here. Okay. So that's one of the things that you're going to need to do. So you've got the bills. So for payroll costs, that's going to be the fact that you have salaried employees or you have hourly employees. Your payroll reports are going to be enough documentation. You might have to pull them in a couple different ways. You'll probably have to pull them in detail so you can see employee by employee. Expect to be pulling reports from January or Q1, January, February, as well as during the covered period. All right. With utilities, you're going to need the bills. With, let's just say rent, you probably will need to provide a lease agreement. You probably will need that, or maybe some sort of lease statement or rent statement that you might get from your landlord. And if you are paying any interest, like mortgage interest, or if you're paying any other types of interest for other debt obligations, you're going to need to provide the statements for that. So if you're not currently getting those in paper form or digitally sent to you some way, now is a really good time to go ahead and reach out to all those organizations and the companies that you're paying to and just get those statements. And again, get them from February to June, because you had to be in any of those debt agreements as of February 15th, 2020. All right, so just go ahead and start like gathering all of that and just put it in a file on your desktop or wherever you want, wherever you need it. Just start saving those things, because it's going to save you so much time down the road if you're just thinking about this right now. All right, so that proves that you have the obligation to pay. Now we need to prove that you paid it. All right, so this is where check stubs come in. This is where receipts come in. This is where that confirmation email from your utility that says, thank you for paying. This is where that comes in. All right, so as you are pulling all this stuff together, just start thinking, okay, do I have the bill? And then do I have me actually paying the bill? You need to have both of those pieces of evidence. All right, you can't just have the bill. You can't just have the payment, because if you just have the payment, that payment could be from your January bill, or you could be prepaying for July, and that's outside of the covered period. So that's not what they want. They want to know that it's within your period within your covered period. Okay, so it's like a current obligation for this period of time. All right, so that's why we need both. This is one of those like nitty gritty audit things. That is why most people hate auditors. And why I'm kind of not doing that anymore. I like to be on the helping side, not the nitpicky side. So now that we have, I'm looking at my notes, sorry. Now that we have the proof that you owe the money and the proof that you paid the money, then the third piece of evidence is going to be your bank statement that kind of rounds it out, okay? And it could be your credit card statement, although I would recommend having everything just flow through a bank statement. So this is where it'll be really easy. If you did have all the money in a separate bank account, you just pull that bank statement for that bank account and you'll go, oh, I have two pieces of evidence for every single line item on this bank statement. You know, my rent payment, my payroll came out of this, my utility payments, and you're like, okay, I have documentation showing that I owed it, and I have documentation showing that I paid it for every single line item, okay? So 3 things: paperwork to show that you have an obligation, paperwork to show that you paid the obligation, and bank statement, all right? Those 3 things, if you're accumulating those 3 things, you're gonna be fine. You're not going to have to panic. So just as you're paying these things right now, make sure you are a little bit uptight about getting your receipts sent to you and making sure you save those confirmations. I really like to use some digital receipt management tools. I use HubDoc and ReceiptBank, depending on the company and what works best. Both of those make it really easy for you to just forward documentation directly into a digital inbox, and it saves all the receipts for you, and it's really nice. So if one of those makes sense for you, I'll try to put links to those in the description below. So use those if that's helpful, but physically just make a little pile on your desk, like if that's what makes the most sense. Or if you have an administrative person, or if you have an accounting team, tell them this now. Like they are probably keeping more records than you know about, but just make sure that they're really clear that they're going to need to have both, and we're going to need to produce it and send it all off to the bank in order for these loans to be forgiven. All right, so I hope that's super helpful to you. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. Like this if it's helpful, dislike it if it's not, so I can get better, tell me what's wrong. All right, happy documenting, and let's get those loans forgiven. All right, thanks, bye.